Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with host Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara.
And if you are watching us online on YouTube, by the way, feel free to subscribe whenever you watch this on YouTube so that you don't miss episodes. But if you are watching online, you'll see that we are separated. I know. I miss my granny.
I know. I miss my Jimmy. Wow.
I am in quarantine right now, and our COVID cases are rampant in our community. So we are separated for probably a couple weeks, but hopefully things tamper down a little bit in our area.
We are now ranked number 3 in the nation for COVID cases. So needless to say, Jimmy and I are being extra careful. This is not fun. So yes, no. we are staying apart, and we are hoping to stay healthy and wish the same for you.
Yeah. So our topic for this week, healing for the holidays. There's so much alienation and loneliness and depression and anxiety and death and on and on and on. And I think people are really struggling, and it's really difficult and challenging for survivors who are so used to already being alienated from friends and family and so forth. So, we're talking about healing. How do you heal in such a really bizarre, unprecedented time where, like us, look at us, we can't even see each other physically. We won't spend Christmas together, and we live 10 miles apart.
No, yeah.
And
it's rough, Jimmy, and you're right. These are unprecedented times. A lot of people have never lived through. Most people have never lived through anything like this. It's scary. It does create extra anxiety. For those who are already lonely, it's horrible. So it's important for us to know how to find some kind of healing through this holiday.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's so many layers to this. And I was talking to a good friend of mine just this morning, and he was talking about real estate in our town, which traditionally has been stagnated for a long time. Home values have plateaued in Somerset County for so long. And, we look around and houses have been for sale, some of them for 3 years at a time, and they're just not selling. My house was on the market for 100 days before I bought it. Back when was that? 11 years ago. And we were the first people to put a bid on the house. So that's just, that's the housing market here, until this year. This year, the housing market in our town and in our county is such that you can't find a house, and the prices have skyrocketed for the houses. And the one contributor to that is COVID. And particularly what's happening is not people locating to our town who are from out of state or out of town. It's people who grew up here and have family here, and they want to be near their family because they're scared to death.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I didn't even know that. I wasn't even aware of that until I talked to my friend today. But, we have millions of people living in isolation currently who physically can't see their families. For millions, Christmas is the only time out of the year that they see their family. Mom, I know that's the case for us.
Well, that is
half of our family.
Is. Yeah, it is. Christmas was the only time we are all together, and we could count on that. And this year it's going to be quite different.
Yeah.
Quite different. In fact, Christmas Day will be spent by myself. Each family will be by themselves. And we're used to having close to 40 people together. So
Right.
that's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's happening all over the place.
Sure it is.
And for, for some people who are declining in health and they're just elderly to begin with, that would have been their last chance to see their family physically, and they can't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just hard, there are a lot of people who are dying right now who can't see their family members before they pass. They're having to say goodbye over platforms like this,
Right.
They're FaceTiming with loved ones to say goodbye to them. That's really difficult. People can't attend funerals. I just got a phone call this morning from a funeral director here in town saying, can you live stream a funeral service? We don't have anybody to do it. And family can't physically show up to bury their loved one who's dead now. I had to decline that because I'm in quarantine. It's these are the realities for people right now.
Very painful. And for survivors of abuse, there's already those layers of grief and pain. And then you add this on top of it. And then you have multiple layers, as you said before, of all this grief that causes so much sadness and heaviness of heart that it's really vital to us that we know how to get through something like this, as well as to bring a bit of solace and peace and healing to ourselves. That's so important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think about abuse survivors, whether it's domestic abuse or domestic violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse, survivors of abuse who already have been removed from or shunned by their churches and families. They've experienced financial ruin years ago. That's part of what abusers do, is they ruin their victims financially, intentionally. They sue for custody of the kids, on and on and on and on.
Right.
And compounded with depression and anxiety that makes it difficult for a lot of people to get and to maintain a job. Now COVID hits and people can't get a job if they want to.
Right.
I think I just saw a thing that last week there were 40 million people who filed for unemployment. That is insane.
It's tough, Jimmy. And I'm thinking of that along with people struggling just to feed, really, literally, to feed their families, to get food. Some people are quarantined and can't get out to get any of the necessities. Then I'm also thinking about the difficulty of being quarantined when you are in an abusive home. Well, I think of the children all the time who are, they cannot attend school. They're at home. Possibly one of the parents knows that abuse is going on. They can't even get their children out of that situation. Or for the children, they get no respite whatsoever. They cannot get to school. They have no one to talk to. These are hard times for every age group, every nationality, everyone, no matter what.
Yeah.
Definitely hard.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we do self-care, during these holidays, during this really difficult time? Self-care is really important. It's important anyway, but, especially now, I feel like it's so important because people are really battling a whole host of problems that didn't exist, 10 months ago.
Right.
Or at least not to this degree. So how do you do self-care? We have a couple things written down here, but, I think certainly this list could be expanded probably into hundreds of different areas. But, we were just thinking through this. And one of the ways that I think you do self-care is that you care for others who are in need. And I know that
Mhm.
sounds really challenging when you're clinging on for life yourself. You're kind of out in the ocean, and you're just grabbing for bits of wreckage to hang on to, just to survive. And you might be thinking, well, how in the world can I care for somebody else when I'm drowning myself? I think about the woman who Jesus mentioned, who offered 2 coins. And he said she gave more than anybody else.
Mhm.
I obviously materialized, material wise, she didn't contribute a whole lot, but it was everything she had.
Right.
And so Jesus's point was, the reason she gave more than anybody else is because she cared for other people,
Mhm.
and that's where her heart was. So
Right.
even in the middle of her struggles, she had a heart for caring and nurturing other people.
I think that's such a powerful lesson to each of us. I think so many times we think that in order to encourage or help someone, we have to do something of some magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
We
Or it's
often
not
think,
worth doing, right?
right, or
Yeah.
just don't bother. We think if we can't give $50 or $100 to a family, don't give any. $20, what's that going to do? Or $5, what's that going to do? That $5 may be our only $5 that we have to give. And I think that's Jesus's point, to care with compassion for others. I'll share just a wee story that happened to me this morning. I got to open my cupboards and share some food with another family. They are struggling so badly. There are 3 children in that family, a single dad, and it's interesting. He did not ask. He called just to say, "Hey, how are you?" And in that conversation, I picked up they were really struggling. You have no idea how good it made me to share some of what I had. I was feeling kind of bummed this morning. Christmas alone, and my job right now, I got word that I may be off another 6 weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
trust me, the unemployment is not anything compared to what my regular pay is. So,
Yeah.
but here was this opportunity, and it really felt good to do that. And I think that's what Jesus is telling us: give from what source you have. But the point is to just give, look and give. The opportunities are there. They truly are. And there's just a warm feeling that we get when we can share what we have.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that is not to pat yourself on the back and say,
No,
look,
no,
look
no,
what I
no,
was able
no,
to do.
no,
But,
no. Far from
for
it.
me, what it does is it restores the humanity
Yes.
back into mankind. And
Right.
people, one of the things that I've experienced is when we help people out, they say, thank God. They'll say something along these lines: thank God somebody out there cares.
Yep. Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
that it's really powerful to be able to step in and help somebody and show them that,
Mhm.
and I'm not the only one who cares. I may be the only one
Oh,
who reached
yeah.
out to you in recent times,
Yep.
but there are other people out here who are doing the same thing. And, I think that helps restore hope. And it helps us to see, that humanity is real and it's raw.
Kindness, yes, kindness and compassion in humanity. And this COVID, as nasty as it is, puts us all on level playing ground. It
Mm-hmm.
really does. It makes all of us seek God, to seek others. It's nobody's haughty, or we don't have that attitude anymore. We're all on level playing ground. We need each other. We need the encouragement and love from each other, and that's important for us to remember. We are all
Yeah.
human. We all have needs, and a little kindness goes a real long way.
Yeah, it
It
really
truly does.
does.
Yeah, it does.
Um, Yeah, another point in self-care during these times is just don't overdo it.
Hmm.
Sometimes we feel We look around and we see the vast amounts of never-ending desperation. And I think
Yeah.
some of us are just wired to want to go in and help everybody. We can't.
Right.
It's impossible. There are not enough hours in the day. There's not enough money in the world, or in your own personal bank account. We just can't do it. So don't overdo it. Spend quality time with God while we're in isolation, and take time away from people who need you. I know that sounds counter to what we just told you, and it might sound like a contradiction, but it's not. Sometimes you have to just stop, because if you're always giving of yourself, you burn out and you wear out, and you're no good to anybody, including your own family.
Well, an empty well cannot give anybody who's thirsty water to drink. We have to replenish the well.
Yeah,
Really do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think about Jesus in Luke 5:15-16. And Luke records this. He said, "But now even more the report about him went abroad," that is Jesus, "and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities." Okay, so more and more and more and more people were hearing about Jesus, and they were so desperate to find healing, and so desperate to find food, and so desperate to learn, and to feel like they're part of a community, because they had been shunned because of their infirmities. And the next sentence kind of blows me away every time I read it. "But he would often withdraw to desolate places and pray."
Yep.
So even when he was most needed by the most amount of people, he got away. He left.
He needed to.
And people died when he was on the mountain.
Yeah. He needed that time with his Father, though. And I think that's important for us to remember. We need that time with our Heavenly Father. This COVID time of isolation has given me, and countless others that have shared, prayer time. Otherwise we're too busy zipping here, there, and everywhere, and we don't take that time to commune, to talk with God. We don't take time to pray. We don't take the time to think of others. This is a perfect time to do that, and count our blessings while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think if all we ever do is think about all the bad that's out there, I mean, there's plenty of bad in the world. I mean, we can make an endless list of all the bad things that are happening in the world, and that if that's all we do, that's what we're putting into our mind all the time, and it consumes you after a while, and you just start thinking, man, is there any good in the world anymore? Well, the answer is a resounding yes. There's good in the world, and there are good people in the world, and lots of them.
Right.
And until we disconnect from the problems for a time and reconnect with God during those times of isolation, we're going to run dry really quickly.
I really love that illustration you just had, because it reminds me of kind of like an electrical cord. There's a Christmas tree behind me, and right before we got on this call, I plugged it in to the power, and it lit that tree up, and it was beautiful. Previous to that, it was dull, and this was a dark room. Well, now with the lights, it's gorgeous. Now, the outward circumstances haven't changed, at all. Same building, same room, all of that. But when plugged into the source, everything lit up. And that's what I think Jesus means for us to do. Take time away, plug into the source, allow him to give us energy, to revive us, so that we then can go out and be that same source to others. So in our self-care, we need to remember we need to plug in to the source. We need to take care of us. That is not selfish at all.
No,
That's
necessary.
necessary. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. I think another point for self-care during these times is to remember that everything happens in seasons. This is
Yeah.
not permanent. In fact, nothing in life is permanent, for the most part. Better times will come, but also bad times will come. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
life. There's always going to be good. There's always going to be bad,
Mm-hmm.
but they happen in seasons. And each season is temporary. And some seasons may last only one day. You may just have one good day out of a month. That is
Right.
totally possible to only have one good
Mm-hmm.
day out of a month. But you may have seasons that last for months at a time too. It just varies. It depends on
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. But everything happens in seasons. And I think sometimes when we're caught in this storm and it feels like it's never going to end, we need to remember that at some point that storm will run out of energy. There might be another storm behind it, but there's going to be a season of calm.
Jimmy, I think of us 12 years ago and where we were as individuals, as a family, was far different than right now. We
Yeah.
were so broken, so empty, so lost in the world that seemed just outrageously painful.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our season of really just total trauma and loss and everything, every emotion you can feel. And you're
Yeah.
right, life does come in seasons. It took an awful long time to begin to dig out. Are
Mm-hmm.
we totally healed yet? No, I don't know that we ever will be able to, speak the words that, hey, I am totally healed. This is all behind us. But we've learned, we've grown, we've learned so much from others. We've had to exercise self-care. I remember both of us. I went through a period of what I'd call just plain stone silence for a
Mm-hmm.
while, trying to grip myself to, just learning how to live again.
Yeah.
You did the same thing. Many in our family did the same thing. But that was a season that we were in. And you're so right. That wasn't permanent. God always gives us seasons. And when we're in a season of plenty and joy and all, we need to learn to appreciate that, more, live in the moment, in other words.
I think the other thing too is when you weather a storm or a series of storms, you become conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
there's a callousing that takes place where I feel like now when really horrific things happen, and last month absolutely was just
That
so
was
many
hard.
sucker
That
punches to the
was.
gut.
Yeah.
But I feel like the recovery happens so much quicker when those moments
Mm-hmm.
happen, and you get really conditioned to that because you've weathered these other huge storms, and you
Mm-hmm.
can do it. You know that you can survive it. You know that
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a time when things are joyful again. You know that there's going to be a time when things are somewhat normal again,
Right.
and so you know that because you've experienced that,
Right.
and so that's why it's really important to remember that everything happens in seasons.
What a wonderful piece of hope you've just given all of us by sharing that. I think that is so important for us to remember.
Yeah.
If everybody takes away just one thing from this podcast today, if they can take that one thought away, I think that will help all of us tremendously through this season that we're in.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And then just the last one that we have, and again, I think there are many more, but find people who center you and build you up, and cut out the ones who tear you down.
Yep.
We have friends, supposed friends, who like to offer their help, and tell you all the things that you're doing wrong in your life, and all the things that all the places where you've messed up, and they're constantly tearing you down, and they can never find anything good in your life or about you. get rid of those people. And unless it's genuine care and you're actually doing something wrong and somebody's trying to hold you accountable, that's perfectly fine.
Even so, Jimmy, there's a right and a wrong way to address that.
Right.
And most people don't get it right, in all truthfulness. Most really don't. Yeah.
So, my recommendation is just cut out the people who are toxic to your psyche, because they're only going to make you worse. They're only going to exacerbate the problems that are already real in your life. And when you're bleeding out, you don't need a doctor to come and take a scouring pad and just start ripping up your wounds. You need people who are going to bandage you and who are going to speak kindly to you and who are going to actually do things to help your wounds to heal up.
We need that healing balm that Jesus talks about. We truly do. Yeah.
And he built people up who were weary. He didn't tell people, well, you dug your own grave, and right. Well, what did you think would happen? He didn't use those mean-spirited ways.
In other words, you're getting
legitimately
what you deserve. Hurt. Yeah, and so many people think that's offering motivation to get. It's not. It just buries us a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
During self-care, I think it's extremely important to choose who is around us. Who do we talk to? Who do we listen to? Tune into those positives that can help us through a really rough spell. And we know this is a rough spell. And I know I have been reading everything I can that has positive affirmations, positive sayings, every prayer in the Bible that is positive. I've been just seeking all of that to kind of fill my empty cup.
So you gave me an idea just now, because I couldn't find the perfect Christmas present for you, right? So now
I'm almost afraid.
I'm going to get you a daily inspiration from Jimmy, a daily inspiration booklet, and it's going to have all the sayings. Granny, you can do it.
I'd love that. That'll be awesome.
Granny, what doesn't kill you will only make you stronger.
Boy, Jimmy, when I come out of isolation, I'll be after you. That's too funny. That's awesome.
It's just there's so many ways to help build people up, and we should be building people up.
Yeah.
And I think in such a dark time, we can't afford to have people who claim to be friends who are tearing us down.
Right.
So get rid of them. I mean, even if it's for a season, if you're not at a place where you feel okay dumping friends, take a break from them.
I know you mentioned this before, Jimmy, that there's people just tearing at each other, even about something such as wearing these masks.
Yeah.
I am still hearing it, seeing it. And I saw on Facebook today, one of my friends put a post up and said, here we are having our Christmas, no masks. Get it? And I thought, whoa, what a slap in the face to those who have lost a loved one or who have others suffering right now, who have gotten this virus. But I'm sure she didn't even think. And that's the thing. And I thought, I'm not going to go look at that anymore. That's not what I want to see. I don't want to see it or hear it right now. So we can be selective. We must be selective, especially during these hard times with who we listen to. Definitely.
Yeah. And not apologize for it.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
Jesus was incredibly selective with who were his closest people. Now, of course, he mixed and mingled with everybody, but as far as his closest friends, he was incredibly selective.
He hand chose them. You're right, because he knew.
And he had to.
Right, he had to, and so do we. What an example for us.
Yeah. So, for healing for the holidays. I guess we'll leave you with this truth bomb. Take time to unplug and give yourself the gift of rest this holiday season.
Amen.
And from us to you, Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast, and we wish you a Merry Christmas.
We sure do, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.